All right. Hello, everyone. And let's talk about digestion today. So that's today's topic. I'm going to be moving around a little bit between looking at this screen and the screen here, but I hope it doesn't bother you too much. Anyway, one of the fascinating things about digestion is that I think intuitively, many of you probably feel that whenever your digestion is not functioning 100%, then there is like your overall health is kind of compromised, right? And so whether it means having a poor sleep or feeling really heavy and sluggish and having brain fog, could be all of those, but it could also be a lot of it could also be hormonal problems. So one of the things that, I use as an approach to healing hormones and the hormones balance, the protocol that we have is really focusing also not just on, hey, what's the one herb that's going to help my digestion, or what's the one herb that's going to help my hormones? Because that's kind of like an allopathic approach to medicine, right? Meaning I've got this disease, what's the one pill? And unfortunately, a lot of people approach the same way herbalism, right? Where like I belong to a number of different herbal forums, and there's this discussion about, what's the one herb for my eczema? What's the one herb for my PMS, right? Or my hot flashes. And so that you basically, instead of, you think we're getting healthy by not doing prescription drugs, but instead of doing an herb. And unfortunately, the result is the same. You're just kind of doing a bit of a band-aid on the symptom rather than be really addressing the true cause of it. And the causes of a lot of hormonal imbalances, it's not that the hormones just fail by themselves. It's a cascade of events that happens. If you go more what we call upstream and really look at the main reasons why hormones fail, I boiled it down to three main things on the physiological level, because I don't work with the emotional side of things, but it's important to, I think, acknowledge them. And that is your digestion, your health of your liver, and your blood sugar balance. So I always think of it as like a three-legged stool, right? Like if you want to sit on a three-legged stool, you can only sit on it when all the three legs are firmly in place. And digestion is one of them. So I want to talk a little bit about how to fix your digestion. But before I do that, let's talk about like what are the symptoms that we are concerning ourselves here with that constitute unhealthy digestion. And some of you may know straight away, it's like, yeah, I've got, this constant stomach ache and pains and that's not good. But there's actually more to that. So let's talk about that first. Then I'm going to talk about the connection between digestion and hormones and how are they correlated. And then then we'll talk about the meat of this video today, which is how do you fix your digestion, right? Which is, I think that's what you're here for. So the first thing is, let's just identify and name some of the digestive symptoms that are not okay to have. And those would be things like constipation, having a lot of alternating between a constipation and loose stool, having acid reflux, having bloating, right? You eat something and you feel like you're 3 or 4 months pregnant, having a lot of gas, so constipation, I mentioned, alternating between that and loose stool, having loose stool all the time. It could also be things like just a stomach ache after eating something, right? And so how many of you here are experiencing that sort of stuff? And here's a really interesting fact that if there's nothing else you remember from today's video, I want you just to remember that one factoid. And that is, just because something is so common, that meaning that you've had it for a long time and maybe all your girlfriends and family members have this problem, it does not make it normal, okay? So I just want to repeat this. Just because it happens all the time, it doesn't make it normal. I remember when I was in private practice and I worked and I lived in New York City, and I used to have clients coming in and say, yeah, but I've always been very bloated. It's like, I remember working with women who would wear pants with elastic bands, like they never wore trousers like slacks, to work. They had slacks with elastic bands, because every time after lunch, after breakfast, they would be so bloated, right, that they wanted the pants to expand. And they thought it was normal. And when they talk to all their girlfriends and colleagues at work, they're like, everybody seems to have it, right? How much of a problem is it? Well, you just walk into Walmart or any of those, and Walgreens, and you just look at how long the aisle is for digestive aid, right? Acid reflux, constipation, loose stool, stool softeners, right? Stuff for pain. I mean, you know how much of a problem it is. It's not just you experiencing those, but it's a lot of other people. So if you are okay to share this, then just tell us, what kind of digestive issues have you been having for a significant amount of time? Now, why is this not normal? And I really want to address this, and I want you to pay attention to this, because I know many of you email us and say, hey, what's the one herb that's going to help my progesterone production? Or what's the one thing that I can do for my hot flashes, right? And sure, there are some things that we can recommend, but like I said earlier, it's basically you're replacing a prescription drug with a prescription from an herbalist here, right? But it's not going to resolve the actual issue. So one of the fascinating things about digestion, I remember when I first learned about it, it was like, wow, this is amazing. So there's two big, I think, pivotal aha moments that I had when it comes to hormones, and especially clearing estrogen and dealing with estrogen dominance. The first one was when my doctor told me about 10 years ago that the liver is responsible for metabolizing estrogens. And the reason why I was having all the symptoms of estrogen dominance was because my liver needed some support. And I was like, wow, this is so fascinating. My liver plays a role. And then the second one was how important is our digestion and how your whole digestive system in helping to produce and metabolize hormones, all of them. And here I'm talking a little bit more about estrogen, because estrogen dominance is my real passion and the focus of our platform. But I'm going to talk about thyroid as well, because it's super important. So let's just start off with a few basic things. First of all, your whole endocrine system that produces hormones need nutrients in order to survive and produce them effectively, right? And so when your digestion is stressed out and is manifesting, right, in form of all these symptoms that I talked about, then you're not absorbing all the nutrients out of the food, and that's going to be, basically, you're going to be going chronically depleted in nutrients such as zinc, magnesium, iron, all the B vitamins. Even if you're taking them in form of supplements, right, or whether you're taking them from food, you still need to have a well-functioning digestion in order to extract all those nutrients and turn them into actual fuel for the endocrine system to utilize. So that's the first thing that's happening when you have compromised digestion. You're not absorbing these nutrients very effectively. Second thing is, which is fascinating, I personally find, is that we are now discovering that, many of you have heard about the microbiome, right? Microbiome, the gut bacteria, the good bacteria, the bad bacteria in the gut. So there is a subset of bacteria in the gut called the Estrobolome, right? So if you think about it, it's estrogen, microbiome, right? So put those together as Estrobolome. And the Estrobolome is a subset of bacteria that codes for enzymes. It produces enzymes that break down those estrogens. And so there is some preliminary studies, and especially is led by a doctor out of New York, New York University, that show the higher predisposition of women with a poor microflora and having a higher predisposition towards breast cancers. And you may know that breast cancers, majority of them are the result of estrogen dominance. But also is just the studies show how much more of the dirty estrogens, those metabolites that are harmful for women's bodies, gets produced when the microbiome is poor. Unfortunately, there is not enough information to, for example, tell us, take these 3 probiotics and that's going to restore your microbiome. In fact, one of the things that we are now appreciating a lot more is that diversity of your microbiome is much more important than just loading up on 3 or 4 different probiotics. And we are now getting a lot more appreciative of the fact that the microbiome is a little bit like a whole city when there are cops and there are thieves and there are, and there are good citizens and are bad citizens, and there are cleaners and there is street control, and all these microbes have a role to play. So I don't have an answer for you of like which probiotic do you take in order to restore your microbiome. However, diversity is key. Eating a lot of fermented foods and supporting your microbiome, supporting your whole body with just reducing the inflammation as much as you can be super helpful. So the other thing that happens with the gut is that when you are inflamed, and remember all these symptoms that I talked about, that acid reflux, bloating, constipation, loose stool, gassy, well, having a lot of gas. I mean, that's just like 101 I hear from a lot of men, for example. I've always been a gassy man. It doesn't make it normal. Okay, so let's just establish that it does not make it normal in any way. So what happens is there is something called beta-glucarate, and it is an enzyme that also helps to metabolize estrogen. And your GI map, if you've done testing on your gut, your GI map will have a range there that is healthy. It will show you whether it is. It will show you whether you're in a good range or not. And beta-glucarate plays a huge role in helping us distinguish between or break down those estrogens to what I call clean estrogens. Those are the ones that make you a healthy woman, because you do need estrogen. But you also have those dirty estrogens. Those are the metabolites that are causing a lot of havoc in the body, including giving you a lot of the symptoms of estrogen dominance. So there is that. Another thing is, a lot of times our digestive issues stem from the fact that we don't have enough stomach acid. And I know many of you here are thinking, well, I have too much stomach acid because my doctor has put me on antacids. Here's another factoid for you, which probably going to shock you, but you can Google that and find out later, because I want to talk about other things. Otherwise, I can spend a lot of time on acid reflux. But one of the things is that Google acid reflux and actually low stomach acid. And you will see that your acid reflux is actually caused by low stomach acid and not high stomach acid. This is the reason why a lot of women are put on antacids and then the pump inhibitors, right? And then after that, they start having a lot of health issues, but not making a connection between those two. Why is it important? Well, because your stomach acid is going to be helping you digest the food, moving it along, prevent constipation. It is going to also extract all the nutrients out of the food that you're consuming. So the other thing is, when you're having a lot of digestive issues and your body is really struggling, your overall cortisol levels go up because you're creating an inflammatory environment in your digestion, and that is stressful for your body. You might not feel the stress because you're not thinking it here. Maybe you don't feel it in your heart, as in like emotionally, but your body is struggling with that. And by struggling with all the inflammation in your gut, then what happens is your cortisol goes up. And many of you know, with cortisol, you are not sleeping very well. You're constantly stressed out. It's going to contribute towards your HPA axis. This regulation is going to break down your progesterone. High cortisol steals progesterone. So high cortisol typically also mean progesterone starts dropping. And the next thing you know, your symptoms are terrible. You're not sleeping very well. And inflammation is just like a vicious cycle. So what do you do to fix it, right? So let's talk about how do we fix our digestion. So we acknowledge first, what are the symptoms that you want to fix? Why do you want to fix in order to have really well-functioning hormones? And hey, you guys, it's not just for hormones. Like when you fix your digestion, everything else starts falling in place. You suddenly start feeling better, as in, let me identify, what does that mean? Your energy goes up, your brain works a lot faster, you're sleeping a lot better, you can lose weight again because the inflammation comes down. You might be experiencing a lot of your skin stuff has improved, right? I can't tell you how many people with rosacea, eczema, just weird itching and rashes improves tremendously. You might also realize that maybe your allergies significantly reduce when spring is here, so that you're not as allergic to everything as you were before. So, and there's a lot of other that, but most importantly, since we're here and talking about hormones, is that you suddenly start feeling like maybe your hot flashes have reduced. Your PMS is not as heavy and difficult. You might experience that you are having, your thyroid has improved a lot. So actually, let me mention that here for those of you who here has Hashimoto's or a hypothyroidism going on. So then In the context of thyroid, there's two main reasons why your digestion is super, super, super important. One is that if you have Hashimoto's disease, you have an autoimmune disease. That means you don't really actually have a thyroid problem. It's not a thyroid disease. You have an autoimmune disease. That autoimmune disease happens to be attacking your thyroid, but as a core, if you look at the primary disease, is the autoimmune disease. Autoimmune is on fire. And so what's important to know about that all autoimmune diseases stem from your digestive health. If you look at any autoimmune protocols that are functionally based from any of the functional doctors, it all starts with the health of the gut. So that's the first thing. The second thing is just really interesting with the thyroid, especially for those of you who want thyroid medication, like you are having given thyroid replacement therapy, right? So whether it's Synthroid or whether even compounded thyroid meds, is that your T4, so Synthroid is actually a T4, and even when what your thyroid is producing is predominantly T4, it then has to go to the gut and the liver, and there it gets converted to T3. And T3 is your working horse. That's what gives you sharp mind, ability to turn fat into energy, good energy, right? Ability to sleep, get pregnant, and the list goes on. So again, the health of the gut in a context of hormones, not just estrogen dominance, but also in context of the thyroid and Hashimoto's, is extremely important. So let's talk about how do you fix all of this. And I know we put up on our announcement for the talk today, we put up the whole thing about supplements and stuff like that. And I will talk about supplements, but maybe it's a disservice to my own business. But I will tell you, because I also want to be just be really very holistic and truthful with you, that supplements alone are not going to fix your digestion unless you fix your diet first. And if you don't know what the hell I'm talking about, then get my book. It's called Overcoming Estrogen Dominance. Okay, on Instagram is the other way around. But anyway, Overcoming Estrogen Dominance. By the way, this is the book that came out in March, but we've got a new cover. So if you have the green one, it's the same book. It just happens to be, we just changed the cover. So so one of the principles that the book is based on, and also our blog, like if you don't want to get my book, go and look at our blog and our recipes. And all these recipes subscribe to the principle of doing the elimination diet, which is highly anti-inflammatory. And what's the big deal about that? Your digestion is going to get a break. Your adrenals are going to get a break. Anyone who is inflamed knows that this is bad news all around, right? Now, anti-inflammatory diet can produce amazing results. And I believe that your supplements, when you add your supplements on top of an anti-inflammatory diet, that's when the magic starts happening. If you're just asking me about supplements here right now, like digestive enzymes and stomach acid and whatnot, without fixing your diet, that is a wrong approach. And if I was just preaching that alone, I would be doing a disservice to you. And so let's start talking about the diet first. I feel like the diet is like the foundation of everything that we do. For those of you who are maybe gardeners, right? If you garden, you know that if your soil is poor, no matter how good your seeds or your starters are, your garden is never going to take off properly, okay? I'm not much of a gardener because I live on a high elevation, but I do garden in my pots though. So that's also true to some degree. But I want to give you an example. Like I live in a beautiful house that's overlooking the mountains. My house is perched on the side of the mountain. And when I was in the process of buying the house, one of the first things that I did was I got a structural engineer to come and look at the foundation of the house, because I thought, what good is that going to be to have a beautiful house with an amazing view? The foundation is bad, right? You get the analogy. The last thing I want is buying a house and then be told that I have to change the whole foundation, right? So your diet is that foundation. Your diet is that soil that's going to nurture your plants. Your diet is the foundation of your home, wherever you're living. And so when I talk about the elimination diet, it's basically a whole principle. The whole idea is to eliminate foods that we know are highly inflammatory, plus foods that you know are not serving you. So for example, if bananas are not your thing, take them out. If you know that cinnamon is not your thing and gives you some kind of inflammatory response, don't eat it. The elimination diet idea is to remove inflammatory foods which are well known, and so those would be gluten, dairy, soy, corn, eggs. Most of my books remove also nightshade vegetables, so there will be things like potatoes, eggplants, peppers, tomatoes. They are not bad as such, but just during the period of 4 weeks, you're gonna check it out to remove them and see whether they are the cause of your problem. Eggs, again, are not a bad food, but during the elimination diet, you're gonna remove them just to see whether they are some of your symptoms alleviate or not. And so fixing your digestion with the diet is like a 4-week process. When you remove all these foods, look at recipes. Most of healthy eating cookbooks, right, are based on this principle. Some of them use dairy. I really don't recommend for you to eat dairy. Remove dairy for the period of 4 weeks, and learn to eat foods that are highly nutrient dense. The recipes, we spent a lot of time developing recipes right at the back here, right, that are to subscribe to this principle. And then the idea is that after 4 weeks, you start reintroducing the different foods one after the other. And it's explained in the book exactly how to do this. And this is when you start seeing like, oh, you know what? I introduced dairy and suddenly all my joints are hurting. Oh, I introduced gluten and suddenly my hot flashes are back. Oh, I introduced eggs and suddenly I'm feeling queasy and I'm anxious, right? And so it's pretty fantastic. I think it's when you really tune into your body to be able to identify and really now to, that thing about, oh, it's that one, I never realized. I mean, that's one of the common sentences we get from people. I never realized how much gluten was impacting me. I never realized how much dairy was really not serving me, because a lot of time we live in denial, or because it's our comfort food or whatnot. Hey guys, changing your diet is one of the hardest things to do. I get it. But it can also be one of the most transformative things you can do for yourself. And so I hope you try it. So on top of that, what else can you do to improve your digestion? The other thing you can do is to support your body in how you break down the foods, right? And so this is when a couple of supplements can really be super, super helpful. I talked about apple cider vinegar just now, and some of you are asking both on Instagram and on other channels, how much apple cider vinegar or how much HCl pills to take. It depends on how much stomach acid you have. So there is a simple test to do that. And Kamalani, if we could post on both all the channels, the link to how to test your stomach acid. I think I've written an article about that. But just super quickly about that, you basically take HCl pills, and it doesn't really matter because there's pretty much a commodity product from which brand. You just pick whatever from a store, and you take them after a high protein meal, like having a piece of chicken, and you take the HCl pills until you feel a burn in your stomach. That's when you stop. When my stomach acid was low, I had to go up to as many as 7 pills before I could feel anything. And that was really bad. I felt like food was sitting in my stomach forever. I was having all sorts of health issues. Right now, if I just take 1, I get the burn right away. And this is when you know if you have sufficient stomach acid or not. The other thing that really helps with restoring your digestive health is adding digestive enzymes. And so in our store, we have digestive enzymes. If you feel so compelled to support our business, it's going to be, Kamalani just posted an article on the how to check a sufficient stomach acid. Thank you. The digestive enzymes is, if you want to support us, is in the Welena store, and she will, Kamalani will pop a link. The whole purpose of digestive enzymes is to, well, actually, let me just step back a little bit and say, why use digestive enzymes, right? I mean, after all, your body should be able to produce your own digestive enzymes, and it's true. And especially when you correct your stomach acid, one of its functions is also to give a little bit of a nudge and a push towards your pancreas and your intestines to produce its own enzymes, digestive enzymes. And there is in fact, your first digestive enzyme is in your mouth. It's called, I'm going to talk about ox bile in just a second. It's called that's your amylase. Amylase is in your saliva. So for those of you who are not producing enough saliva, having something like a digestive bitter, which I'm going to talk about just now in a second, or having a bit of lemon or a lime to stimulate production is really important. Amylase is the first enzyme that's going to be start digesting your carbohydrates. So for example, if you were having a burger, right, you chomp down on the burger, all the bun and the vegetables that are in a hamburger, you're going to be digesting that through the saliva in your mouth as a first course. And then after that, there's other enzymes that get produced in the stomach and then the intestines. And so the question is, hey, so if my body is supposed to be producing its own enzymes, why take digestive enzymes? My answer to this is that as we age, our efficiency of producing our own digestive enzymes is not as good as it was when we were earlier. That's right, we were younger. So, if you think about it, for most of us when we were younger, we don't have a lot, like we didn't have that many digestive issues, like most of us. It doesn't, it's changing now. A lot of our community members and moms who have serious health issues with their daughters, right? And so, things are changing, but I'm talking about us, like the Generation X, right? We did not have as many issues. And so you need to gauge it by yourself. One of the ways of knowing if your body is chomping down the food, is digesting the food, extracting all the nutrients out of the food effectively, is to look at your poop. If you see food in your poop, like you see, for example, you had a salad, you had some carrots, and you look at the poop, and it's, hey, you guys, there's nothing shameful, embarrassing to do that. It is in traditional Chinese medicine, looking at a poop and discussing the stool with a doctor is a diagnostic tool. Instead of getting testing done, the first thing they do is look at the poop. And as a patient, you will be asked to look at your poop and report back the color, the smell, whether it floats, whether it sinks. All of that tells a story. And whenever it tells a story is whether you see food in the poop. If you're seeing food in the poop, with the only exception will be things like chia seeds, corn is not easily digestible. So those things are okay. But if you're seeing pieces of kale, if you're seeing a carrot, right, in your stool, you're seeing, particles of, let's say, flaxseed that you've consumed, those things should have been digested properly. And so even though you increase your stomach acid and your digestion is still struggling, this is when taking a digestive enzyme can be super helpful. And like, for example, our digestive enzymes has got a whole bunch of different things, including ox bile. So let me talk about ox bile in just a second. And by the way, this is also a great product for those of you who have lost your gallbladder. You actually need ox bile even more so than people who still have their gallbladder, because you're not releasing as much bile on demand as it probably will be beneficial. We've got amylase in it that I talked about. We've got peptin. We've got protease, protease is what for your protein enzymes, and lactase. So if you ever consume lactose, it's going to help you digest that. We've got lipase here as well. So a very comprehensive, rounded approach to enzymes. When is a good time to take it? Typically will be after a meal. That's when you're really helping your digestion. You're supporting your digestion is when you take digestive enzymes after a meal. Digestive enzymes, however, can also be very beneficial systemically, meaning that they are a little bit like a Pac-Man chomping down of debris in your body. And then you can use them systemically for your body. So like reducing inflammation. A lot of people report a reduction of pains and aches in the body. But for that to happen, you need to take the digestive enzymes on an empty stomach, right? So at least 2 hours between or after a meal. In fact, I used to do them like late in the evening before going to bed, when it's like a few hours after having dinner, okay? So that's one thing. Another one to consider is, we have something called Gut Revive. It's got this beautiful herb combination that comes in as well that really helps to heal up digestion. And so that comes in, Kamalani, if we can pop the link to the trio, that will be helpful. There is an herbal formulation we have. I ran out of that. I don't have it at home here with me right now. But there's also the herbal solution is something that really helps with restoring digestive health as well, especially if you have a leaky gut and you're having an autoimmune condition. That can really be helpful. The third thing I want to mention to you is somewhat similar but different from enzymes, and that's digestive bitters. And I've been talking a lot about digestive bitters that we created. There's one that's before, this is the after. Before means before a meal, this is after a meal. And the purpose of digestive bitters is like, even the minute you put them in the mouth, you start feeling the salivation. And it's a good thing, right? Because like I talked about it just now, is that your saliva is so important, because this is where you produce amylase. That's the way you start breaking down carbohydrates. And what will happen then is that you're kind of priming your digestion for receiving food. The difference between, I always get the question, what's the difference between the bitters and the digestive enzymes? And the difference is that it really depends, they work differently. And what is better for you, you'll need to try both to figure it out, because we're all different. So digestive bitters, like these, because of the bitters they have, so we use things here like ginseng and dandelion root and chamomile and catnip and licorice and fennel and star anise and all these sort of amazing herbs, right? And the graphis as well, huge for the immune system. When you do that, when you do digestive bitters, from the moment you put them in your mouth, there's a whole enzymatic process that starts flowing through your body. Your body, again, starts producing its own enzymes, and also, with the stomach acid, right? It's like its own, you're basically priming, you're nudging your own body to produce its own. Is that enough for all? For some people, it's not. And so this is where the digestive enzymes can become really helpful. Can you do both of them together? Yes, you can. And, and your body will tell you when it's enough. And that is when you start having a bit of discomfort and like a heat in the stomach. That's when your body is like, hey, I've been having too much of that good stuff. Back off. Because there is such a thing as having too much of a good thing, right? So I hope this is helpful, just to understand, how important your digestion is. When you fix your digestion, and let me ask you here this. Do you know anyone who is truly healthy, who has an unhealthy digestion? You must know the person pretty well, because it's a pretty personal question, right? So maybe your family members, like, do you know someone who's got chronic digestive issues, but is like super healthy weight, great energy, super sharp mind, sleeps fantastically well? Like, I can tell you this right now, I don't know about you, but I don't know a single person like that. And so when you fix your digestion, everything is going to start falling into place. Your skin is going to improve, your mental health is going to improve. In fact, people who work with depression and anxiety, gut health is the first starting point for a treatment. Whether you're dealing with hair loss because of thyroid issues, whether you're dealing with poor sleep, brain fog, I mean, energy levels, you're having weight issues and you just can't lose. I mean, that is huge in managing all of those symptoms. In fact, one of the other last tip I want to give you for today before we wrap up is that one of the ways, and I talk about it in the book, in Overcoming Estrogen Dominance, I discussed there how to reintroduce the foods over a course of a couple of weeks. And one of the ways that you know that a food is not great for you is your body actually put on weight, like literally overnight. It's so fascinating. Why? Because inflammation causes weight gain too, right? And it can just be water weight, but it's because of inflammatory response that the body holds on to water, and then hence giving us sort of like that bloaty feeling, right? Which is one of the ways that women put on weight. So, and it's so, just to give you an example, I remember like working with women, for example, when I was in private practice. I'm not anymore, but when I was, is that women would introduce, for example, gluten, right? And let's say she will take her weight, right? We'll measure it, and let's say the weight would be, let's just call it 120 pounds. At night before going to bed, right? She wakes up in the morning. Actually, sorry, you take the weight first thing in the morning as you get up, just the way you would do it normally, and then reintroduce gluten. and then weigh yourself 2 hours later, and the weight will be like literally 4 to 5 pounds more. And it's not equivalent to the food that she's just consumed. It's not equivalent to the cup of coffee she had, which I hope she didn't. It's not even that. It is just the inflammatory response of the body. So putting on weight really quickly can be one way of knowing that food does not agree with you. Another one is using a pulse. Your body, again, inflammatory response will increase your pulse really quickly. And if it's more than 20, it's not 10, it's more than 10 beats per minute more, then you know that food is most likely inflammatory. And you literally measure that. You measure your pulse, and then you introduce the food, and you measure your pulse again 15 minutes later. And the difference is 10 beats a minute more, then that is an indication that food is most likely not complementary to you. So just really simple techniques like that. Food sensitivity testing is pretty useless, especially foods that you've been avoiding for a very long time or for a period of time. You go and test, and shows you, for example, you've been avoiding dairy, right? Because you feel like it's not really serving you, is because maybe you heard Magdalena talk about it, so you remove dairy. And then you go and do your IgG test, and you get your results back, and it says, oh, wow, it says I can eat dairy. Well, you can eat dairy because your body's not producing the antibodies to that dairy at that point. So it's just what we call false negatives, right? So this is not a very healthy way of, it's not a productive way of knowing what are your food sensitivities. I have found that doing the elimination diet is really going to help you figure this out. Somebody's asking about fibroids from gut health. I wouldn't call it a direct correlation, Leslie, but fibroids are definitely, can be, the classical fibroids, most of the fibroids stem from estrogen dominance. And guess what? We have a whole chapter in overcoming estrogen dominance just on fibroids itself. And yes, there are some enzymes and there are some herbs that can help, but the changing of the diet is really going to make a huge difference. And then you combine it with those enzymes that help reduce fibroids. You combine a little bit of herbs that help to reduce the blood flow to the uterus, and that's when the healing really happens. But you've got to combine it with a really good diet. Okay. Hey, guys, I hope this was helpful. There is people on Kabalani people on Instagram asking for links to the product. So I think the best thing for you to do when you're on Instagram, just go to wellena.com, WELLENA.com, and all the things that I talked about here are there. If you want an ebook version of the book, it's on Amazon. If you don't want a physical one, you just go on Amazon and get it there. And I hope this was helpful, you guys. I'm going to do a quick shot of the digestive bitters. The before a little bit sweeter. No, sorry. The before a little bit more bitter because we really want to prime the digestion. The after a little bit sweeter because I want it to be like a dessert replacement so you don't crave sugar. 4 squirts. Wow, 4 squirts is a full serving. And already I'm feeling in my mouth, it's like, wow, I've got so much saliva, I'm going to choke on myself in a minute here because it's just so potent, right? So, all right, everybody, thank you so much for being here today and being curious and staying curious. And take care of your digestion. It's going to make a profound difference in how you feel, how you look, how you sleep. It's really going to help you so much. All right, thanks, everybody. Bye-bye.